Oh, and we're back. Good evening.
Hello.
Hey, Chewy. Hey, mate, what's going on?
Not a lot.
We're here.
Not a lot.
Hi,
I feel
Hi.
like the great southern weather might be running out of puff.
Well, it wasn't bad weather today, though, was it?
No, it was good. It's just the wind has changed. But I do see everybody in the chat from the north talking about how they're shortchanged in winter, in summer. Sorry, they gave us the wrong change. They gave us too much.
Right.
So
yeah,
too much summer down here.
Well, like we said the other day, I mean, without being a purveyor of doom, with all these climate change issues and more moisture in the air, we will probably see it in winter worse than the North Island does, and the North Island will probably see it worse in summer than the South Island does, and Wellington will be fucked all year round. Hi. Hey, everybody. Good to be with you. Good to be back. Now, if you were with us last night and you knew that there was a few technical issues, there wasn't really. We didn't stop the broadcast, but I have a feeling that my cameras might be dead. My batteries and my cameras might be dead. So if it goes to crazy screens today, I've done a little bit of backing up and checking up. I know what the problem is, and I will rectify it over the next few days. So just putting that out there. It's a silly thing to put out there because if it doesn't show any problems at all, then I shouldn't be talking about it, but we are talking about it, and
it's like the COVID response all over again.
All over again. Up behind me there, right there, there's a copy of Byron C Clark's book, Fear. As you see going along the bottom of the screen, everyone who does a super chat, who sticks a super sticker, or I added a new thing, becomes a patron this week, goes into the draw for that book, which I will draw on Friday and notify the winner as to who it is. So if you'd like to get in the draw for that book right there, it's autographed by Byron, Fear, then super chat, super sticker, or become a patron. Speaking of patron, I haven't even shared my screen yet, Joe. I've been so busy doing other things, celebrating the Black Caps win. Big thanks to all our patrons. If you want to get involved and if you want to do help us, buy batteries for our cameras, then you can get involved by being a patron. A congratulations and a welcome to Finn Sargison. Finn Sargison is our latest patron. Finn joined us actually, I think, just before the end of last night's show. So something went on where Finn thought, all right, I think it's time to jump on board as a coffee runner, which is $5 a month. And we thank you very much, Finn, for being a part of the team. And we look forward to continuing to do this as much as we can, as you see on the bottom of the screen. So for this here, it's that way, isn't it? This. Patrons, it's patreon.com/Big Hairy News. At the bottom of the screen tonight, though, if you'd like to go into the draw for that book, which will be drawn on Friday morning, New Zealand time, super chat, super sticker, or become a patron, and you'll be in the draw for it immediately. I don't know, Chewy, what else is there to say? Should we just get into it?
Yeah, let's kick this pig.
Have you got something pithy and tangenty to start off with, like we do sometimes before we start talking, or are we just getting into it?
No, I went for a pith beforehand.
Yeah, so did I actually. I just had a pith. Let's start with what was breaking news for 6 o'clock news, which is now 3 hours old, and that is the Te Whatu Ora chair, Rob Campbell, has been fired after controversial remarks made on social media. Here's the breaking news story on News Hub.
In breaking news, embattled Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand chair Rob Campbell has been fired by the health minister after refusing to back down from a highly political statement he made about National's Three Waters policy. Political editor Jenna Lynch joins us now. Kia ora, Jenna. What's the minister have to say?
Jenna.
Health Minister Ayesha Verrall was brutal, saying she had lost confidence that Rob Campbell could be politically neutral, and therefore she was invoking her power to remove him from the role, aka sack him. This all comes after Campbell made a post on LinkedIn criticising National's Three Waters policy, calling it a, quote, thinly disguised dog whistle on co-governance. Public sector bosses are bound by political neutrality clauses in a code of conduct, and the Prime Minister has said that Campbell's comments fell well outside that. But when News Hub hit Campbell up about this yesterday, he dug in. He said he had nothing to apologise for, and there was a difference between political impartiality and being politically neutered. So the government really had no option but to act as he dug in, because he was attacking their opponents and upholding political neutrality neutrality and the perception of political neutrality in the public service is paramount. Rob Campbell has just appeared on RNZ saying he thinks that the government has misinterpreted the code of conduct that he was operating under, and he did not rule out legal action.
So the first thing is this whole conversation, this will be a part of the conversation we'll get to. We're going to play some of that conversation from RNZ as well. This whole conversation around I wear different hats. Do you know that I like wearing hats? And but people who are in the public sector, and actually I was thinking just then, and I should have got this before we came on. There was, I think, a minister last year who was like, oh no, but I'm not speaking in my role as a minister. I'm speaking in my role as whatever the person was, as the MP for whatever area they were in. And I don't know. I understand it in theory, but I don't know if you can do it in practice. Like, imagine if someone who was involved in, I don't know, a government department that deals with Pacifica, right? Just argument. And they were posting on their social medias. And can I ask, when did fucking LinkedIn become a social media? Anyway, posting on their social medias kind of racist rhetoric. Would they be able to go, well, yeah, but that's I'm not wearing my, Pacifica department hat on that. I'm just me chatting with the lads. You know what I'm saying? So there's some pretty easy lines I think you can draw when it would be across to the wrong side of the conversation. The question is this? Because, I mean, I guess we could never work for a government agency, Chewy, because it sounds like he was basically saying what we've been saying fairly strongly of recent times, that what National has put out there is pretty much a dog whistle. So I actually think he's right. But the question
he's 100% right.
Yeah, but is he allowed to say it?
I don't think so.
Okay, because this is the thing, and Chewy will tell you this, and I will tell you this, is that we don't carry water for anyone, and one of the ways we don't do that is we go, what if it was the other way around? What if it was the head of an agency, slamming those woke policies of Labor under a national government? So if in that instance we're going to go, not okay. In this instance we have to go, it's not okay. Even if we agree with the principles of what the person's saying, that the rhetoric around the Three Waters discussion to do with National is a dog whistle. So maybe what we'll do now too is we'll hear from the man himself. So RNZ got a bit of a scoop, and they spoke to him first. So this that was the breaking news at 6 o'clock. This was at about 5:30, and he was having a chat with RNZ, and I'll play you like 2 or 3 minutes of this, and you can hear what he's got to say. Now let's have a think about that idea of can someone, it's almost the same as anything, can someone who is the CEO of Telecom or Spark, can they wear a different hat in public? Can someone who's the CEO of NZ Rugby, can they wear or are you always associated with their role? I know it's not quite the same because they're private entities, this is a public entity, but are you allowed to have a private life, and are you allowed to say your own things? And that's where I guess this conversation is going to go. So let's have a listen to what he said on RNZ this afternoon.
Indicating that she has removed me from this position as chair of Te Whatu Ora. I think that's a mistake and an overreaction to the statements I made in a private capacity, but nevertheless, that's what she's done.
Why do you think it's a mistake and an overreaction?
Well, I think I am entitled to make comments as a private citizen, which I did in the LinkedIn post, which has caused her apparently
social media
concern. And secondly, the suggestion is that I somehow got offside with the opposition, which, given that I spoke to Christopher Luxon earlier today, we discussed the issues. I made an apology to him for any personal offence he had taken. He accepted that apology. We had a very nice discussion about it, so I don't believe there's any issue there. I've seen Richard Prebble from the ACT Party saying that he believes I have the right to make statements of this kind. So it's a little bit hard to see who I've offended other than the minister.
It's not necessarily about offence, though. It's about, are these comments going to cause a prejudice that's not going to be able to do your role? So it's not necessarily about offending someone. I mean, me, Chewy, I've got incredibly thick skin. I'm very hard to offend. It doesn't mean that necessarily everything that was said to me or about me or in a business situation would then still be appropriate. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think anybody that works for an organization knows that you represent the organization that you're part of. You know, in previous jobs, I've been pulled up for things that I've said on Facebook and stuff like that, even though it's very clear that that's my own personal view on something. You run the risk of bringing the organization or your employer into disrepute. I think as you go further to the top and you know that you have basically a political role, and it's clearly stated in a code of conduct that that you have to maintain at least the appearance of being politically neutral, because I mean, I don't think anybody can be truly politically neutral. I think everybody's got their biases and opinions and that sort of thing. But you get to that stage, you have to do your best effort. Running to LinkedIn and making a huge, big, very out in the open statement. I mean, I want to say his statement's not wrong. In my opinion, like this man put it out there, probably knew that it was going to cost him his career, still thought it was.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, maybe not having just heard him, but I mean, if he stood by them, you know, we'd be having a very different conversation. If he says, "Yep, it was important enough for me to say it."
Yeah, I also think that you're right about the further, you didn't use these words, but the further up the pecking order you are. So you're talking about a government industry, but we could go back to my rugby CEO example. If the CEO of Rugby New Zealand said something on their social media, that would be very different from the receptionist, you know, because it's a different position in the public eye. And I think a lot of this has to do with the public eye, which is why broadcasters, you know, they can't necessarily get, like if you're on air for let's say you're on The Edge, right, radio station, and if you do something in your private capacity as a social media person as well, and that turns out you're, I'm using some extremes here, not that anyone on The Edge is, but we're like a white supremacist or something, then that's likely going to cost you your job. Part of that's to do with the profile you have, part of it's to do with who you are as a person and how that reflects on the station, in this case on the government entity. But in this in particular, I wonder what he said, will it inhibit him doing his job well? And it might. There's about another 90 seconds I want to get to this from him talking, so let's have a bit of a listen and then we'll wrap up with Mr. Campbell.
Is it a matter of offence, Rob, or actually sticking to protocol? Because you say these were private comments in a personal capacity, yet you put them on a social media platform.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, I did, and we're entitled to do that in a private capacity. If there's been a lot of talk about this code of conduct for Crown entity board members, and if you actually read that, it notes that we are allowed to make comments in our private capacity, provided it doesn't erode public trust in the entity we're representing. It's very hard to see how making a comment about a Three Waters policy has eroded any public trust into Te Whatu Ora.
Do you actually believe those are private comments, though, on a forum that so many people can see and disseminate?
No, they're public comments, but made in a private capacity. I didn't make those statements as chair of Te Whatu Ora, and that was perfectly obvious to anyone who read the statement. It was made as Rob Campbell, director, but not I'm director of a number of agencies.
Aren't you always in that position, chair of Te Whatu Ora? Always. Like the Prime Minister's never not the Prime Minister. You're never not the chair of Te Whatu Ora.
Well, I always have to have regard to the interests of Te Whatu Ora, and I don't see anything in the statements I made which was in any way damaging to Te Whatu Ora, which is the point in the Code of Conduct, which recognises that people who hold positions like mine do have a private capacity in which they're entitled to talk. And
so that's going to be the rub of this whole thing. It'll be really interesting to see what the Code of Conduct says, because if the Code of Conduct is about, you know, and I'm paraphrasing now, about what if it brings harm to your role, and if he's working in a health area and he makes a comment from his political, like his personal political beliefs around infrastructure, you know, it will be interesting to see. He's been fired, he's gone, and this was how it was reported on One News. It says, I no longer have confidence that Mr. Campbell is able to exercise the political neutrality necessary for the role at Te Whatu Ora. This is from the Minister. I have decided to exercise my power under Sector 36 of the Crown Entities Act to remove him from the role effective immediately. I have raised with Mr. Campbell serious concerns about the political nature of his recent social media comments. In response to the sacking, as we've just heard, the former Health New Zealand chair said he believed it was an, quote, inappropriate reaction, end quote, to the statements made in my private capacity, end quote. Another quote there. So I think probably what I'm hearing you say, Chewy, and maybe this is what most people would say, is if he valued his job, what a stupid thing to do. But if his political ideologies were more important to him than that, then what a semi-brave man for putting it out there. I mean, I don't know he's probably on several $100,000 in that role. And the flip side to that is if this code of conduct does say that you're allowed to speak in a private capacity on political issues, so long as it doesn't impact how Whatu Ora can operate, which this doesn't appear to, then
I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, I think we'd be having a very different conversation if he said these things on, say, a lockdown friends only Facebook page or something like that, and maybe someone in his friend group screenshotted it and took it to the media. I think he'd had more of a leg to stand on then. But LinkedIn is not that platform.
Apparently it's social media, though. I don't think it's social media.
Yeah, it's and this is a tough race. It's the worst social media. Oh my God, I dip into it every now and then and just go, oh, everyone here is insane. But yeah, I mean, again, I've had instances with places that I've worked in where I thought I was very clear that I was commenting on Mike Chewy Bennett, private citizen, not Mike Chewy Bennett, employee of Company A.
Well, there's probably some people watching or listening now who are involved in HR. Tell us. And I know, see, I haven't worked for anybody as an employee of anybody for a decade. So actually I've worked for myself or I've contracted to companies. So I know as I was kind of leaving employment contract world, they were starting to bring in clauses and contracts about people's social media activity. I don't know what that is today because I haven't had to sign one. But if there is anyone who's done one recently, I'd be interested to know what you got to agree to now. And can a company just say anything you say on your private social media, we can use as a way of reprimanding you or not? I mean, it seems to me what they're saying is he's saying the code of conduct says I can do this. They're saying it's not, and I guess an employment court will decide.
And I mean, the other aspect of it is we're in the run up to an election. Like, Labour can't blink on this.
Yeah,
it had to be like, sorry, dude, you got to go. This is a dumb shit thing to do. We can't have anything messing with the run up to an election.
Right. Yep. All right. Anything in the chat that we want to particularly mention about that, other than Craig agreeing with me? I like what Craig says. LinkedIn isn't social media. I agree.
Oh, I wish it wasn't, but yeah. Cyrus NZ, I respect the guy for having the courage of his convictions. Not the smartest career move, but walks the walk. The government had to make the move.
Yeah.
Kooky, he's correct, but he's not supposed to say it publicly. He's been rightly fired, even if he is morally correct. Time to Fly says pretty clear breach, and the minister was entitled to remove him. Gareth says he didn't say it privately. Anyone on LinkedIn can read it. Yeah, well, absolutely.
But he made clear he didn't say he was saying it privately. He was saying it in his private capacity. It might be splitting hairs. In other words, as a citizen, not as the director.
I mean, again, we come back to LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a profession. It is about your job.
Yeah.
It's a resume that you can pretend it's Facebook as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very clear who he is. Yeah, I don't think he's.
Yeah, that's true actually, because his LinkedIn will be connected to his role. Yeah, so that's an interesting point.
Dumb. And yeah, common HR policy. If it brings the business into disrepute, and that's that's as grey and muddy as it needs to be, in my experience.
I guess we'll find out. Thank you for your participation. Hey, Chewy, I want to remind you of something. You ready for this? Go on.
Oh, fuck!
You went to Fiji. Are you serious?
Oh, very unhappy about you popping that one out.
Serious, Izzy?
I didn't.
Oh,
We'll talk to you again and like get you back on the show.
So, there has been some news today. News Talk ZB host Heather du Plessis-Allan ridiculed the teenager Izzy Cook during an interview. This is what the BSA has decided. Now, the BSA is a broadcasting standards authority. It only applies to sort of mainstream media outlets. We don't come under it. The other thing is it's a bit of a toothless. It's not like it can actually do anything legally against a radio station, a television station, a host. Basically, all of the radio stations, television stations agree to be a part of it, and they agree to abide by what they've said. So, in saying all of that, it is the only kind of recourse for people to make complaints about media outlets when they're not happy. As you guys will probably be aware, if you're not, you can go back and have a look. I complained, made a complaint, first one of my life, to News Talk ZB about this, and I got the report back and I read it to all of you guys. If you didn't know about that, if you weren't watching us in, just go search for our back catalogue. I'm sure if you look up Heather du Plessis-Allan on our YouTube channel, it'll come up. And they basically upheld the complaint against her for being unfair. And then they said, now the case is closed. Well, some other people who complained weren't happy with their response. I didn't take it to the BSA, I would tell you if I did. But others did. And then the BSA agreed with those of us who thought it was wrong. And they said that she ridiculed this team. NZME was correct to uphold a complaint. So when we sent our complaint, it was upheld, about Heather du Plessis-Allan's interview with teenage climate activist on its News Talk ZB Drive show, the Broadcasting Standards Authority has found. The BSA said du Plessis-Allan ridiculed 16-year-old interviewee Izzy Cook, a climate activist and school strike for climate organizer. During the interview in September 2022, Cook admitted she had recently traveled to Fiji despite one of her group's demands on of being a ban on unnecessary air travel. Du Plessis-Allan's reaction to Cook was hysterically laughing at and teasing the interviewee for over a minute, the BSA said. Now, go back. That was a piece I did by myself. I had no co-hosts, and I blew a foo-foo valve. And that one you can go back and look at for yourself. And part of the reason I blew a foo-foo valve is because it's a place that I used to work for, and I expect more of it. But let me just put it this way. The laughing's not real. And she would never do that. Like if it was a political adult who was saying something hypocritical, she would never do that. Not in a million years would she do that to an adult. So those were two of I didn't actually have a problem with her challenging her on her, the child's hypocrisy. No problems. You can do that. But it was the way it was done. Also, they claim to have not done any research on Izzy Cook. I call bullshit, because they asked her specifically about what if I wanted to go to Fiji, and have you ever been? Where did you last go? Fiji. So it's pretty clear, in my opinion, it's my honest held belief, that they scoured her, or someone, a producer, an underling or something, scoured her social media and probably saw a photo of her in Fiji, and they brought that into the interview. So it was a setup as well. So all in all, it was pretty ugly from a journalist and broadcaster who's supposed to be reputable and has one of the biggest jobs in the country, that drive show in News Talk ZB. Yes, Chewy?
Yeah, pretty disgraceful carry on. I'm glad that some people pushed it further. The BSA, it's so toothless.
Yeah. I mean, it's all they've got. But I mean,
it's like, here's our judgment, and I guess do with it what you want. Shrug.
Yeah. I mean, what they should do is have some kind of agency or some kind of regulatory system where they can actually impose a ruling, whether it's a fine or that host has to stand down, or I don't know, something. It sounds a little bit archaic maybe, but certainly the flip side to that is wet bus ticket, and you've been bad, say sorry. which is
even if
basically-
they have to do a retraction, they just
well,
bury it.
that is part of the ruling. Let's keep on. Let's keep going through the story. The complaints plural against du Plessis-Allan's broadcast said the interviewee breached the fairness, offensive, and disturbing content, children's interest, and discrimination and denigration standards. NZME agreed that because Cook's age and potential vulnerability in the interviewer did breach the fairness standard, which is what they sent back to us. The company acknowledged the breach immediately and upheld the complaint by apologising to Cook and advised du Plessis-Allan had apologised to Cook in private, the BSA noted. Those who complained did not think the response was good enough and sent their complaints on to the BSA. The BSA concluded it would also have found a breach in the fairness standard. We acknowledge there was foreseeable harm in the form of embarrassment in the moment for the activist and further ridiculing and bullying online. We're going to come to that. It said in a decision released on Tuesday, the apology on air did not appear genuine and was used as an opportunity to further mock and criticize the interviewee. Overall, we found the interview went further than simply critiquing and questioning the policies and the interviewee's alleged hypocrisy, and instead amounted to ridicule, which was unfair. The BSA decided NZME had done enough to address the breach, so nothing else coming from it. Now, I do want to go to the online conversations, Chewy, but is there anything you or any of the texts want to pick up before we do that?
No, I thought that statement was bang on.
But basically what they've said is they've already said sorry. So, we uphold it, but no, that's about it. No big deal. Now, the reason I said I wanted to go into a bit more of the online harassment is the royal we, did this as a story 5 months ago, right? So here's the story here. It's had over 4,000 views, which is, for us, it's quite a big video. But there are people finding us today, right? I'm just going to refresh it to see if there's anything new in there as well. And there are people finding us today because of the story that's out there, and it's much of a muchness. Nothing wrong here. Not sure who the bearded boffin is. Well, that's me. Unfortunately, I did think Heather would be like this. Heather is a hero. Heather called her out as a hypocrite. And this episode, this clip that we did, if you ever want to think about, people talk about like the internet being a cesspit or a river of filth, all you really need to do is go into the comment section of this video. And I always try and sit in someone else's shoes for a second. I think that's how you get empathy. Yeah. And if anyone can look at what Heather du Plessis-Allan did in that instance to Izzy Cook, who has a 16-year-old ideological child, and think it's okay, then man, you shouldn't be a parent. Sorry, just to be blunt, you should not be a parent. I fear for your children, because that's what it came down to. It came down to what she did to a child as an adult, and completely inappropriate, completely wrong. And although I'm glad the BSA upheld the complaint, it's not really going to do anything, but it is what it is, Joey. It's something.
Comment sections. Yuck.
How's our comment sections? What am I getting messages from? All right. Cool. Well, I've got more stuff to move on to. Or if there's anything else we want to, JN says trolls be trolling. I agree with that. I mean, that's why. I like what Dave Chappelle said. Not that everyone has to like who Dave Chappelle is, but when he goes, I don't listen to, I don't read the Twitter comments because it's not the real world. It's exactly right. It's not the real world. It is a load of horseshit and bullshit. And we're going to get to a little bit of that shortly. Thank you, Mike. Mike says more good chat. There you go. I want to talk a little bit about the census, Chewy.
Yes.
This conversation around the census, it kind of comes back to this idea of trolls be trolling, because there is this idea going around at the moment, right? I'll bring it up here. And here is a person who has put this up. This year, actually, this is a video. We'll play this video. This year, the New Zealand census will ask you what your gender is, as opposed to your agenda. See what I did there? Stats NZ insists everyone has a gender. I'm reading this for those who are listening to the audio, but not everyone believes in gender. This is the funny. I haven't heard this before, people saying, I don't believe in gender. I understand people debating what it is or what the words are, but now it's just like, no, I don't have one. I'm not a woman. I'm not a man. I'm not a other. I don't have it. There's not one at all. I'm like, oh, this is a new thing that I'm hearing, but then maybe I'm a bit cloistered. But not everyone believes if you're like me, you have a sex and a personality. Stats NZ are going to assign you a gender if you have none. If you have none, there is no option to opt out. I'm still reading this off a video on Twitter. There is no option to answer none. I want to change this, so I'm boycotting the census, because that's always the way to get things changed, is to remove yourself from the conversation. Now, it just kind of ties back a little bit to the conversation around Izzy Cook, because I thought, oh my goodness, this looks like it's getting some traction. People are going to boycott the census. So I did a bit of Googling around today. Not a single listing on the internet. No news story, no nothing anywhere about any kind of movement to boycott the census. So we're talking about it today for a couple of reasons, because I want to. That's one of the reasons. But actually, I guess I want to say as well, it's being sold as a news story when it's kind of not. And it's a little bit like, even though if you look back to that video we just showed, there were a lot of people in there that trolls be trolling. It's such a small percentage of the population. This may be the same. Now, you might rightfully ask straight away, then why the fuck are you talking about it? Well, we get a chance to talk about Karen Plunket. We always like to do that. And, you're going to struggle listening to this, Chewy, I can tell you in advance. But, we're going to have a look at some stuff that was said on his show yesterday. And we're going to talk a bit more about what it means. Because the really unfortunate thing is that he has one valid point. And the unfortunate thing...
You better keep that unless it gets away.
Well, the unfortunate thing is he has one valid point. It's not unfortunate that he's got one valid point. The unfortunate thing is it gives some weight to his argument in some sectors. Because some people will go, well, he's right there. And the point that he's right in is the idea of the difference between sex and gender. Mm-hmm. And in the census, it's referring to gender at birth and sex at birth. I'm going to show you the questions. I won't get too far into it, but he's got one point where he's right. And I'm just saying according to the science of it all. Because the conversation I'm going to play you parts for the moment, the guy from Stats New Zealand talks about gender and he's getting his terms gender and sex intertwined. And it seems that since the government has now passed that law that you can change your sex on your birth certificate, in New Zealand, almost like nowhere else in the world, we seem to now be interchanging. It's funny because like in the 1960s, sex and gender were interchangeable, the words. And then there was a movement where gender and sex became separate. And then there was a really clear movement about 10 years ago that sex and gender are different, right? And now it feels like there's a movement in New Zealand to bringing sex and gender back to being interchangeable. And when the government made the new legislation that you could change your sex on your birth certificate, the celebration after it, the person who actually put that policy through said, yes, finally, people can identify by the gender they want on their birth certificate. But that wasn't even the legislation they just changed. So there's, in New Zealand, it seems to maybe be a bit different than anywhere else in the world. Maybe that's why Stats New Zealand is into playing the two words. But Plunket's correct in sex at birth and gender you identify with, which unfortunately means other people are going to grab onto his other arguments, which aren't right, and go, if he's right there, he must be right in other areas. That's a bit of a prelude to the conversation, Trevor. Is there anything you want to jump in on before we get into it?
Oh, I have lots of funny comments about the census. But yeah, people tend to throw their toys and weirdly get what they want, and then it kind of ruins the whole point. Like, I'll come back to this after we've seen the video, but there's a reason for asking this question, and it's not just about like wokeness, the woke and the cult of trans and whatever Plunket wants to get all frothy about.
Yeah,
there's one thing. It's healthcare, you dingus.
I just want to respond to Caitlin, because Caitlin's far more of an expert in this area, obviously, than any of us. I just want to make it clear I'm saying the same thing, Caitlin, that you can only only shows sex on your birth certificate. But I think it was Jan Tinnity. I'm not sure about that. The person, the MP who was behind the change in that legislation, her victory speech, she said, finally people can identify by the gender they want on their birth certificate. So the person who had just passed, who was behind getting the legislation passed, so that you could change your sex on your birth certificate, that person then said, finally people can identify with the gender they want on their birth certificate. That's what I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing with that. We're clear on it that it only shows sex, but what I'm saying is even the people who passed the legislation didn't seem to have their wording defined and accurate, and maybe that's a part of this whole confusion and conversation. Now, Chewy, you pulled off your headphones before when I played the Heather du Plessis-Allan, but you may want to do this again.
No.
So we're going to go have a listen to Karen, and there's a couple of things here. Yeah, we're going to listen to Karen, and part of the reason we're listening to it is I want to just encourage people again. I don't believe in cancel culture, but I question why anyone goes on his show. We've gone through other interviews that he's done, and we've wondered why people would subject themselves to this bombastic pile of shit, but they do. So this is a part of the conversation where the guy from Stats New Zealand is talking about what it means to be cisgender, like what that term means, right? We're not going to go through like this. Trust me, I know you're looking at this bar and going 26 minutes. Holy crap. There's a couple of minutes now, and then I'm going to play 45 seconds for later, and that's all we're going to play of Karen. But I just want to remind us all of this person who invites people onto their show to talk about things, to get information, and then screams at them for a good amount of time. Here we go.
Is cisgender, Jason?
Oh, sorry, cisgender.
Yeah, because you used the term, and I've got no idea what you're talking about.
Apologies.
Okay, first of all, that's bullshit.
I don't believe him.
Of course he knows what it is. He may want to disagree with the term, but he knows what the definition of that word is.
It's not a problematic term at all. It's a descriptor.
It's irrelevant whether it is or it isn't. The point is he knows what the definition is. So I don't believe him for a second, because him and his ilk talk about it incessantly. So of course he knows what it means, but we'll keep going.
Apologies. Cisgender is, so myself, I was born a male and I
No, I'm not asking about you. I'm asking you, what is cisgender?
Okay, this is important as well, because Sean Plunket doesn't want to have him tell a personal experience, right? He doesn't want the guest to give an example using himself. Important to remember, because guess what he's going to do very shortly by using himself as an example to help his argument.
Yeah, so cisgender is if your sex and your gender identity are the same, as they've been the same through birth. Like
cool. So cisgender is normal.
Cisgender is the majority of the population.
Yeah. Okay. Where does that term come from, and who invented it?
Like that matters.
Good question. I don't know who invented it, but I know that we've done a lot of consultation on the sex and gender standards. We've been through a couple of rounds with lots and lots of people. With rainbow community, with the general public.
Hang on. You've been going with the rainbow community, who are a minority community, right?
So he has a problem. He has a problem with talking to a minority community about terms that a minority community uses, so they can identify that minority community on a census. So this is the complaint.
You could spin that off into a nightmare universe that we don't talk to minority groups about what to call them.
Yeah. So imagine
only the normals get to say, or only the normals get to decide what to call people.
All right, we'll keep going.
Far out.
What about the cisgender community? And is this, how do you define the rainbow community, Jason?
It's a good question, because, that's not just one community. That's made up of lots of different individuals of different things, like we all are. Like, I
also don't know what it seems like. Plunket thinks these are gotcha questions. I don't understand what he thinks he's getting. Like, no, it's strange.
Cool communities are.
Yeah. I'm going to put it to you in a broad sense that gender identity is an ideology.
No, it's a scientific. It's a classification, and I'll put it to you that if you put yourself in someone else's shoes for the previous census,
I don't need to. I'm only in my shoes. I'm only in my shoes. It's not.
Hang on, he's now talking about his own experiences. I'm only in my shoes. He just told the guest, I don't want to know your experiences. But now Sean Plunket doesn't want to talk about the bigger picture because he's only in his shoes. So he wants to talk about his experiences.
The census for me is not an empathetic exercise. It's a legal requirement as a citizen of the country, and I hope that the information I provide provides a useful picture for policymakers and other people. Why?
Exactly why we're asking those questions.
Yeah,
so it is really useful for policymakers because we know that people from rainbow communities actually have often.
Oh no, but you've already told me it's really hard to decide what a rainbow community is.
No, you never let me finish the question. What I was trying to say was the rainbow community, LGBTQI+ community, is a very diverse community, and you can't just say they're rainbow, they're not rainbow. Within that community, there's lots of different characteristics. There's lots of different genders. There's lots of different.
Well, the idea of that community is in itself a construct. I mean, there's not a cis community. There's not a straight community.
Yes, there is.
There's not a blokes who go fly fishing community, is there?
There's not a bloke. I know. This is the best bit.
Oh
There's
my God.
Okay, everybody Google right now, fly fishing club like Topor. There's dozens of them. There's not a blokes who go fly fishing community. Yes, there is. There is 100% that, you fucking moron.
Jason, this is all all woke constructs, basically.
This is the beauty of Aotearoa New Zealand, Sean, that we're all individuals made up of different characteristics.
Yes, we're all individuals.
To celebrate, and we should be celebrating.
Is it, Jason? Jason, geez, you are going incredibly woke on me. I don't care if you celebrate or not. You're a public servant. You're there to do a job. I'm here to ask you questions about the taxpayers' money I'm spending on you and your department to do your job properly. I don't care how you feel. I don't care how you emote or whether or not you're going to spin me and tell me it's something to celebrate. Do we understand that?
Statisticians are humans too, Sean, but I think, for me, census is about everybody in Aotearoa New Zealand.
So I want to...
So there's a really interesting thing happening with Sean Plunket at the moment. The level of authoritarianism that's coming in from him at the moment is palpable. Yeah. Here's a tweet, and then just you heard that set up at the end then, right? It's like, this is what I'm doing. I'm paying, I'm doing, I'm this, I'm that. I was lucky enough to see some of his show last week. I think someone might have sent me some of his show, and it was about a piece of art, a poem written by a highly regarded performer in New Zealand, and it talks about killing James Cook. Quite a controversial poem, I acknowledge that. And this is what he said about that poem, right? He said, "The government doesn't have the right, without my permission, to publish and that should be promote crap like that." So Sean Plunket's now of the opinion that the government doesn't have the right to assign funding unless it goes through him.
I mean, let's not dismiss this out of hand. How much funding went to Fuckboy Island? I didn't agree to any of that.
No, true.
I don't know. There's lots of things that, like, has he just become critical boomer mass? Has he gone super massive boomer black hole that he thinks that he's so important that everything needs to be run past him? Chris Hipkins going to come to him cap in hand and go, "Please, Mr. Sean, can we publish this poem? What do you think?" He's just makes me want to tear my skin off.
So why can't we ask this question? Sean Plunket, and I've talked about this before, he tries to bang on about he doesn't receive any government money, yet his funders, his business mummy and daddy, get $300 million a year from the government to run their preschools. Now, what if no one's run that past me, Chewy? No one's run that past me if they're gonna be funding crap preschools like that. So I think they should stop doing it.
Why does anybody go on his show?
Yeah, and this is the question I'm asking and wondering as well.
Like, why is someone from a government department, Stats NZ, why is is his audience really that big?
I think probably what's happening is it's getting bigger, and it's probably, I would imagine someone like Stats NZ would go, the audience that listens to him of tinfoil hat wearers, alt-right lunatics, white supremacists still need the information, and we're not going to get it to them any other way. I suspect that
would
might
work
be
if he got a fair shake of the stick, but he doesn't. Like he's trying to answer all of these questions in good faith and just getting derided. My whole question as a taxpayer, and I'm very concerned about my tax dollars being spent on Stats NZ guy's paycheck, is that he should be doing something better with his time. I don't care if it's go to the break room and do a crossword. That is a better use of my tax dollars than him being on the platform.
So let's have a look at one more clip from it. I wanted to play this little short clip, and then I promise I'm finished, people. You can turn your volume back up once we're done. He's going on and on and on and on and on about an opt-out option. There's no opt-out option. And then the guest says, well, yes, there is an opt-out option. And he continues to go on and on and on about being no opt-out option. So it's like you see a disinformation expert or a cultist who just goes, this is my point, this is my point, this is my point, you're wrong, this is my point, this is my, it's actually a little bit like that. Have a listen to this conversation around an opt-out option.
My question simply is, Jason, why do you not have an opt-out for this question like you do for religion?
So Sean, you can still fill out the census just the way you want to.
Can you answer my question, Jason? Why don't you have an opt-out option for the gender question the same way you do for religion?
There is a prefer not to say option, but what we want to do is encourage people to fill out the census as many questions as they can.
Then why do you have an opt-out for religion? Why do you have an opt-out for religion, Jason?
Because some people don't have a religion.
And some people don't have a gender and choose not to buy into the ideology of having a gender, Jason.
I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not trying to be flippant with the overall topic, but some people don't have a gender. So some people aren't men or women or girls or boys or other genders that they identify with.
Well, there is agender and non-binary. You could say that.
Well, but they're still going to have a place where they can tick the gender box. They're agender. But anyway, look.
Yeah, but Sean, I don't think they get that option. I don't think
Sean's not meaning that. What he's meaning is us conservative right wingers who don't want to participate in your ideology. We don't have a gender. That's what he's meaning. So it's very important to actually realize what he's saying.
Yeah, right? I think he fell accidentally into a point that he didn't realize that he was trying to make. But yeah, yeah.
So let's now have a look.
Agender and non-binary is a thing. It could be something that could be listed in the census, but it's not.
Let's have a look. Well, let's have a look. Let's have a look at the census. I've got the questions.
Good.
This is what all the hubbub is about, right? This is what everything is about. Question number 3. What is your gender? Male, female, another gender.
Oh, well, there we go. Okay, cool. So it's all good. It's all good.
That's it.
Well, all of my argument is gone. All of Sean's is gone. Like there is no argument there. There's your choices.
And then
in the binary box, no, then tick other. Don't
and then
want to
there
answer
is
it, tick other.
And then there is, what was your sex at birth? Male, female. They're the 2 questions. And this is what all the hubbub is about. And as I said at the start, the only thing that Sean can grasp onto that he might have right, like a broken watch, or every dog has his day, is male and female aren't gender terms. And that's where it becomes problematic, I guess, on a form, because we're told there's unlimited gender. So how can you do that?
By writing it in.
But then what do you do as a statistician when you've got, I don't care about this, but I'm thinking like as a mathematician, if you've now got 14,000 categories, what do you do? What you could have, I don't care, have it. But what do you do as a statistician? And how do you remember a census is about data for things like planning health for the next 50 years. That's why it's really important to know male and female, because males, for example, will need funding for prostate stuff. Whatever you identify as, like as your gender, but it's important to know how many males are in the country, because that does link into planning for things like health in the future. So
yeah, I think the perceived issue there of like, it would make it more difficult for the statisticians. They can work that out. They're smart people. But yeah, as far as the culture war argument goes, for all the TERFs out there and the people you know, that are just scared of people having more freedom to identify how they feel. It makes people uncomfortable. Sean can't understand it because back in his day, I don't know, you'd just beat anybody weird with sticks and throw them in a quarry and you wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. And I think we can all agree it's a better world now. But yeah, I think this is why it's so vital to have it on the census, because this is such an evolving thing. It is part of our healthcare structure. It is part of the makeup of our society. It's so wide ranging. And I really do hope that we're right on this. For the cultural war aspect, is that there's a really loud, really small group of people, and 90% of the country is just going to whip through this thing, tick all the right boxes, and then send it off.
So yeah, of course. And even though I say there's a, in my opinion, this is not worded correctly, right? Obviously, I'll tick male because that's the closest word, and I'll tick male. Well, I say obviously, I think it's obvious, but maybe in this day and age, people might say, I'm not sure how you identify. Well, I'll tick male and male. And I don't see anything there about cisgender. Like there's no cisgender box on the what is your gender. So that whole thing was just culture war bullshit. I also think the one area they have made a mistake is sex at birth is the one category where male and female is not the only box you could tick, because obviously there are intersex people. Now,
I was just thinking that, yeah.
Yeah, so you could have male, female, intersex. Now, intersex, from my research, and look, there are people watching who are who know this far more than me, but I do my research, and this is what I was going to start with as well. So we're all on the same page. Sex is a label, male or female. At birth, you're assigned it. Yes. Gender is much more complex. Social, legal status, set expectations from society about behaviors, characteristics, and anyway, so that's why I think on a form, gender is more difficult. And please hear my full sentence, right? And not as important when it comes to planning the next 50 years of New Zealand's resources as sex is. Doesn't mean it's invalid, doesn't mean that it's not fantastic to know where people sit, but how someone identifies, as Planned Parenthood says right here, I'm pretty sure, gender identity is how people feel inside, and how express your agenda through clothing, behavior, personal appearance. It's a feeling that begins in very early life. It's a personal thing, right? I always think about it, and this might be a bit clunky, as, sex is the hardware, gender is the software. You know, that's how I think about it, because I'm a boy and I like computers. And this might not be very good, but I'm a boy. I am a boy. But the sex at birth thing, according to what I've looked into, there's probably about 3,000 people in New Zealand who are intersexed. Now that's a very, very, very small percentage of people. It's 6/100th of 1% of the population. And I am extrapolating somewhat. This is Intersex Society of North America. Intersex is basically not XX or XY, other variants. And if you're not XX or XY, that's 1 in 1,666 births, right? 1 in 1,666 people out of 5 million is about 3,000 people. Now, 3,000 people is not a big percentage of people, but it's certainly big enough to have a category on a census, because it is a very tallyable number of people to know in our research. Because when I say the thing about the sex question is that's going to contribute towards things like, funding for prostate cancer. There's also going to be other funding needed for the intersex community that's not needed for male or female. And 3,000 people at any one time is enough people to have that, I think, on the survey as well. Now, look, people can educate me. Like I said, there's people watching. I typically try and find out information from official sources. Intersex Society of North America says if you're not XX or you're not XY, you're 1 in 1,666. It doesn't make it any less valid. It doesn't make it, I'm not saying so it's too small. 3,000 people is a lot of freaking people. There'll be other groups on that census that'll be way less than 3,000 people. I mean, the religion question, I don't know how many Jewish people there are in New Zealand at the moment. I think there's only a couple of thousand at one stage. Probably, what is Tom Cruise? Scientologist. There'll be fewer than 3,000 of them in the country, but they'll be able to write that on the census. So I think I think it's unfortunate, because I think language is precise, and I think we need to get it right, that there is some confusion between gender being male and female on the census and sex being male and female, but it's not enough. Society is not falling down. You know, I know what it means. I know what they're meaning, and it's fine. It's fine. It's not a problem, and no one's going to be put out by this. Well, I shouldn't say that. I can't speak on behalf of you, but I don't think so.
The other census question that is interesting because it's developed over the years is New Zealand European.
Mm.
The ethnicity question seems to be a bag of cats. People don't like the term Pākehā. They want to be New Zealand European, but then what if you're not European? What if you don't want to identify as New Zealand European? What about the years where they just went Asian as an ethnicity? You know, no census is going to be absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to tick New Zealand European because that's the closest option to what I am.
Yeah.
I'm of European descent. But yes, it's a weird one. But people get so frothy over Pākehā.
Well, I guess the question about that is like, so New Zealand European basically means Caucasian, you know, and because, you know, our forebears, like my forebears are from Ireland, you know, so I am from Europe. My forebears are from Europe. What if you're from somewhere else in the world? What if you're from, I don't know, the USA, and your family's been there for 300 years? So you're not from Europe. How do you identify that? Like, I don't have a problem with New Zealand European. I don't have a problem with Pākehā. But I do wonder if maybe that is some language that needs to be adapted because the origins of it are from Europe. What if you are white, but your ancestry is not from Europe? Maybe there's another term there. Or how do you identify that? Or the other thing is, but the thing that's always a bit ugly about that is, like, you can be, I don't think it will probably just say Pacific Island. It'll say, you know, Tongan or Fijian or Niuean or something like that. But for New Zealand European, it's like honky. That's basically what they're saying. They're talking about the color of your skin, not the place of your origin, because you could be from the USA and you'd probably still tick, like, your origins could be USA. You could probably still tick New Zealand European. So it is really just a question about what's the color of your skin, which feels a bit ugly to me.
And the other one I want to bring up and this is coming from someone that ticked this option one year. Don't tick Jedi.
Oh, why not?
Under your religion. Don't, because it comes up as a religion. It becomes a percentage of New Zealanders that are religious.
It'll be fewer than 3,000, I bet you.
Like, if you are a practicing Orthodox Jedi, sure. But the only other person that I know that is legitimately proud of the fact that he ticked Jedi is Moncrief Spittle here in Dunedin.
Right.
That absolute nut bar. So he's ruined that, and it's also not a good idea from a stats point of view. So
what you're saying, so I'm clear, is you just don't want there to be a bigger percentage of New Zealanders to be identified as religious, even if they're taking the piss, because it makes it seem more credible.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I would like there to be, like, I would imagine that most of the people that ticked Jedi and the religious things were atheists, no faith.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes, you know, part of what you look at, how many New Zealanders believe in God or whatever. You know, maybe that's an important stat. Maybe it's not. Nobody's built me the Jedi Temple yet. So I don't know how it comes in from an infrastructure point of view or a town planning point of view. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm boring and I'm just going to open up my census paper and I'm just going to tick the boxes and work my way through without trying to take the piss.
Should we do it together next Tuesday? Because it's Tuesday night. Should we do it on air together?
Well, that sounds like a truly riveting show, Pat, and I'm sure
everyone, all of us do it together at the same time.
It feels like we're doing an open book test. What's everybody got for question 7?
Chewy, what's Pākehā? What's Pākehā plus Fijian? What's the answer for that one?
I put weeaboo.
Okay. All right, sure. Okay, I'll put that down as well. I don't know if it's right, but I'll put it down for me. Hey, thanks, JN, for the super chat. You're in the draw for Byron's book. We've also had someone sign up, and I saw the email. I'll identify the person tomorrow as to be a Patreon tonight during the show as well. In fact, maybe I should, because I think it might be someone who's in the chat right now. If you are, it is Time to Fly. Time to Fly picked up a Patreon level tonight, so thank you. We appreciate that, Time to Fly. And we'll
thanks,
get your
buddy.
We'll get your name on the script tomorrow, which is getting fuller and fuller and fuller. And I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to need 2 pages.
We'll have
soon,
to make
so.
it scroll soon, like credits after a movie.
Oh my goodness! Hey, it was fun tonight. I'm interested in this census question, and the thing I would say about the census is it's really about getting data for planning the future of lots of things in the country. Like, for example, we've just been through these floods and stuff. We'll get some real accurate numbers as to where people are in the country, where they're living, where they're located, what resources need to go there. When it comes to the questions of sex and stuff, really important to know, what the population is doing at the moment, because we need to plan for the healthcare for the next 50 years. And it's the way we start to look at, how much funding is going to need to go towards cervical cancer versus prostate cancer, because we need to know all these things. So, yeah, I mean, and I actually think it's a legal requirement to
I think there is an offence. I don't think it's ever enforced, but I think
no, that's not correct, Joey. Because actually, it was one of the questions on Karen's show today. Is he asked the guy, has anyone, and he said, "Yep, we've enforced it a few times. $2,000 fine." So I think to be honest with you, I don't know. I'm not going to give anyone an out here, but I think possibly if you are someone who chooses to publicly state you're not going to do it, you might have a target on your back. But if you're someone who kind of has forgotten about it or doesn't get around to it or whatever, it might be something else altogether.
I have seen some of the sovereign citizen type groups sending it back, going, this household is not a living entity. I refuse to make contract with you. All that weird pseudo legal jargon that they use. So yeah, that'll be fun to see how that works out.
Very much so. Been fun tonight as well, guys. Thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate your time. Thank you to everyone for checking us out. Thank you to our patrons as well. Thank you to the super chats tonight. And remember, on Friday morning, we'll give away that autographed copy of Byron's book, Fear, for people who become patrons this week. And if you already are a patron, you already know we love you. And as Chewie always says, if you become a patron, then you instantly become 22% more attractive. 22% more attractive to the person you're trying to attract. Whoever that is.
We ran that past Stats New Zealand. And
Stats New Zealand told us that. So that's what it is. And other than that, I think we're pretty much done for the night. Anything in the chat that we want to particularly highlight? Or
actually, one thing I did want to say, am I right in thinking that the last census got really buggered up somehow?
Because of the it was supposed to be a couple of years ago in COVID. I think they actually cancelled it because of COVID, didn't they? And then I think the one before that, I think there was one that got screwed up because of COVID. And there was another one that definitely got screwed up because of the Christchurch earthquake. So we haven't had a lot of good data in the last 10 years.
Really important.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Oh, Gareth. So just so people know, we don't walk and chew gum. I know we do walk and chew gum.
Carry anybody's water.
Sorry, we do walk and chew gum. We don't walk and carry water.
And we did have Sean on the show, and I didn't call him an onion made of shit. So there we go. We're just taking all the. Maybe that's his gender. Like
onion.
If he has to write it in. Yeah, onion. Male, female, onion made of shit.
And look, if you're somebody who is far more informed than us, which is most people, when it comes to issues around gender and that, then connect with us outside of here. There's a Facebook page that we very rarely look at and use, but we do get messages from it. Both Chewie and I are on Twitter. And I like being the dumbest person in the room, happy to be educated. And I want to learn more about this and go through it. But the big thing I will say to you about the culture wars around the census at the moment is there's no real problems.
Yep.
There's actually...
We're hearing from the loud fringes again, still, always.
All right, that's us. We're done. Thank you, team. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Chewie. Thank you, Ball Boys. Thank you, umpires. And we'll be back tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hero News. Stay safe, everyone. Hooroo.
Cheers.